Four rules for a defensive investor that really will make you wonder how Warren Buffett made an insane amount of money. And according to Intelligent Investor, there are four rules for the common stock component of a defensive investor. The first one, there should be an adequate, though not excessive, diversification. This might mean a minimum of 10 different issues and a maximum of about 30. So that could be ETFs, mostly common stocks. That's his whole point, is that you could basically make your own ETF by just owning a certain amount of common stocks. And then, two, the company selected should be large, prominent, and conservatively financed, meaning that they're not borrowing an insane amount of money. They are not really dabbling in too many things. It's them conservatively financed, meaning that company focuses on their mission only, and not worrying about dominating everything, but focused on what their value proposition really is, to find the value. The third, really good one, is each company should have a long record of continuous dividend payments. That, to be specific on this point, we would suggest the requirement of continuous dividend payments beginning at least in 1950. This was when the Intelligent Investor was written. But I think we could still take a good point from that. And that you want it to be a dividend aristocrat, meaning that they have consistently paid dividends for over 30-40 years, which it's hard to find in some companies. But companies or even ETFs where they do this, it'll make an insane amount of money, because for the first few years you're not going to make much, but as compound interest increases, it starts off really slow, and then once those dividends get reinvested, and then after like 10-20 years you see the increase go in insane amount that it's shocking. This is really how Warren Buffett got insanely wealthy. He didn't make too much of his money at the start. He didn't start with an insane amount. Yeah, he bought some companies and turned them around as a value investor. But how was he able to maintain it and actually grow to that insane amount? And that's owning things that continuously pay dividends. And the fourth one is that the investor should impose some limit on the price that he will pay for an issue in relation to his average earnings over the past 7 years. So, and here we suggest that this limit be set at 25 times such average earnings, not more than 20 times those of the last 12-month period. But such a restriction would eliminate nearly all the strongest and most popular companies in the portfolio. In particular, it would ban virtually the entire category of growth stocks, which would have been for some years been the favorites of both speculators and institutional investors, and we must give our reasons for proposing so drastic an exclusion. And this, to put it in simpler terms, means that really you don't want to be overpaying for something. You want to look at something that's valuable, but also is going to constantly pay dividends, meaning that it's going to compound, and for those first few years it's not going to be too much, and then there it goes. Because really it goes into the idea of compound interest. But what gets rid of compound interest? Speculation. And his whole point about this is to not be in it with the speculators. You don't want to be in it with them, because they will drive things in ways that it's not valuable or too low, and that's why the stock goes crazy like this. But for the defensive investor, he cares more about dividends and actual recurring financials and conservative financials, like in the second point. They need to really be consistent. Same thing with the entrepreneur. The ones who made it didn't do too good in the beginning, but were so consistent that by the end they just made so much money they didn't even think it was possible. And it's kind of the same thing with the defensive investor. He knows that he needs to keep going, and especially he needs to understand that for the first few years, those dividends need to come in and be reinvested. But on the next page, there's actually makes a good point that really, for the standard practice of a defensive investor, is to focus on dividend paying stocks more than growth stocks. Why is this? Because in growth stocks, they've become such an attractive thing for speculative investors because the price is much higher in a growth stock, but they pay barely any dividends. Why is that? Well, it's because now, as the speculator, they're able to make so much money on the upside and downside in constant fluctuations, whereas the defensive investor, he's focused on his goal. He doesn't constantly change his mind about everything. And it's what I've been doing for a couple years now, is letting a couple thousand, some thousands, I'm not going to say exactly how much, but I've let it slowly with dividend. I bought a lot of dividend stocks. I put them all in reinvestment. And I actually started a Roth IRA too at 19 to put this money in. It's only like $1,000, but I just started. I don't even have a job and all this career and everything. And for me, I'm just focusing on growing with as really something on the side while I read books and focus on so many other things that really just makes the defensive investors so amazing, because the defensive investors at first might get beaten by speculators. The defensive investor doesn't need to sell his investment. Just like Warren Buffett. And really how his principle has lasted so long is because of that exact reason. That the defensive investor doesn't focus on the day-to-day speculation. Focuses on the long term, such a long amount of time, that by the time you get to the end, you'll wonder how that's even possible. And for me, I'm sharing from experience of me just starting. First few years, they're not going to pay you too much. Which, for somebody who's not disciplined, it's hard. It's so hard. But on this one, another point. The defensive investor should obtain at least once a year the same kind of advice regarding change to his portfolio as he sought when his funds were first committed. Meaning, when I first put these funds in, why do I need to change them now? If I was in it for the long run, why did I pick these funds in the first place? You want to pick something that is going to last for an insane amount of time. And a lot of those are going to be good ETFs, because after this book was written, ETFs started to get more popular. Because now, these portfolio companies allow you to access a portfolio without having to pay for all these different stocks. Instead, you could just own it as a basket of stuff, which only builds on to the point of long term. And some of these portfolios, they don't make any changes to their funds. They have the same investments for more than 30 years, which is exactly what a defensive investor wants. And another point is, incidentally, if his list has become completely selected in the first instant, so making the first choice of what investments, there should be no need for frequent or numerous changes, which means, really, again, to the defensive investor, you don't need to change your investments constantly. If you have an old principled philosophy of how you're going to make those investments, like the defensive investor, focusing on something that is going to last for such a long time or pay such recurring dividends, that I could just reinvest it for those first few years. I got to stay on the defense, and then after that, I'll beat any speculator. Because speculators lose money when the price falls like crazy. But the defensive investor, doesn't matter, because if you chose things that have dividends, yeah, the price is going to speculate. There's still going to be speculators in there. But if you have the speculation and then you have the constant dividend payments, you actually create an average out by dollar cost averaging, where it's the line of best fit that goes exponentially, which I can't believe is taught in schools. they'll teach you about compound interest in math, but they don't teach you how to maintain compound interest. Because maintenance is a whole nother issue. If you're constantly worried about investments, you probably chose the wrong investments. And reality is the S&P 500. It's your best choice, but you don't have to choose the entire S&P 500. You could look up everything in the S&P 500. Even now with AI, ChatGPT can help you analyze stocks. And ChatGPT is good at analyzing, but it has no perspective. It can't see it from your perspective and what your life goals are. So it's up to you to be the defensive investor that has been talked about in Intelligent Investor. And it's such a powerful book that more people need to read. That I think reading is good. And it's so unfortunate and sad to see that many people in my college, and a lot of colleges, they don't read books. Read books, man. Read books. You need to read books like crazy. This thing was $20, and my return rate has been thousands of dollars. This is better than cryptocurrency. The ROI on a book is more than a cryptocurrency. Stop believing in all this doo-doo ass, stupid crypto hype up stuff. The defensive investor recognizes where the ROI really is. It's in the long term. And stop worrying about this day-to-day stock market going crazy, bananas, everything. It's not going to get you anywhere. Read up, buddy. Read up. I know you need to read. Because, man, the literacy rates in the U.S., it's shocking how low it is. I mean, you could be in, like, 6th grade, and your 6th grade class could have a 50% literacy rate. So, even less than that, it's been like 30% in some places. Which means that 30% have read a book. What are we doing? Read books. Study investments. And if you don't want to read these thick pages, follow me on YouTube especially. I'm going to keep making videos explaining this stuff. Because you can read the book, still have no idea because you're in the wrong mindset. If you're reading this just to read the book, you ain't going to get anywhere. It's about focusing on the long term and learning something from this. Paying attention. That school's never going to teach you. School's never going to teach you sales and how to market your own skills. Because school's not going to teach you too many skills that are in the real world. This stuff is what you need. And if you really want amazing books, you could go to Thrift Books and get a book for $5. You don't have to be rich to make these insane investments. This book made me thousands of dollars and it was $20. Made me thousands of dollars. Probably millions in my future if I use this for actual real life skills and I teach people and show them how to invest as a financial representative, as sales that I'm going to be doing, really as an internship that I'm really focusing on. Because, man, if I could teach financial literacy and increase everybody's wealth, our standard of living is going to skyrocket because now we got to fill that gap. Part of that is reading books, man. Get a bookshelf. $100 on at Target or something. $5 on Thrift Books. Buy 20 books for $100. Pay somewhere around $20 shipping. Because if you buy them bulk, shipping's not as much. And you can start for less than $200. Get a $100 bookshelf. You gotta build it yourself. Go to Home Depot. Do that kind of stuff.